Morning.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
LaShonda, does it look like there's anybody trying to get in, or are they able to access directly?
Nope, they can come directly in.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Mayor, I think we can go ahead and get started, sir, whenever you are ready.
I'll really be ready once my coffee's done, but we don't have to wait for that. Welcome, everyone. I just want to thank you guys for being on the call again. We are utilizing the same format as before with our friends over at the Wichita State Public Policy and Management Institute to help facilitate. I hope everyone got their agenda. So we're going to go through the agenda and then also hopefully start laying out some goals and getting on to getting stuff done. So thanks for being here. Johnson, you on? Do you want to say anything as co-chair?
Hey, Mayor. No, we can get started. I'll let you handle the intro. Great job.
Thank you. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and pass it on to, well, anything opening that anyone is any burning comments before we jump into anything?
Yes, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And Misty, just let you know I'm here, but it says Megan Lovely because I'm using her computer.
All right.
So noted. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, so with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our friends over at the Public Policy and Management Institute. I don't know if LaShonda or Misty are going to take it, but the floor is yours.
Very good. We're pretty good at tag team. And so I think, Bob, if you want to give just a quick update from our conversation on from the police department and where that heads next, and then LaShonda, over to you.
Thank you, Misty. I appreciate all of the input we received from you last meeting. Hopefully it's all captured in the minutes from the last meeting, and you all agree that those were the appropriate takeaways. Since this group met, Mayor Whipple and Councilmember Johnson and I met with a group that was called together by the Racial Profiling Advisory Board. There were a number of other groups that were at the table as well. Many of the issues that you brought up were discussed by that group, or at least have been offered to us for consideration. There's probably two ways for us to approach the comments and feedback from you last week. As you go through today and establish your final priorities, if police reform is one of your priorities, we can then drill down deeper on these issues. If you believe that there are a sufficient number of groups already dealing with that, then what we can do is make sure that these items from your last meeting are shared with the work group that we've been meeting with and will meet with in the future. We've already committed to a follow-up meeting where we're actually going to take a small group from the advisory board and other organizations and just roll up our sleeves and start ticking off these issues one at a time. So there's going to be a significant amount of work that goes into that. If you're comfortable with letting that work group move forward, then what we'll do is give you periodic updates on their progress. I'll be glad to answer any questions on any specifics or about the work that we have planned. All right, thank you.
Can I add on to that?
Wanda, go ahead.
Okay, so if anybody wants to also go to the other racial profiling board meetings, it's held on Thursdays at McAdams Park. There's a meeting tonight at 6:30 p.m. So, and they meet every third Thursday. So that's another way to make sure everybody's on the same page if you're interested.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on the WPD process before we jump over to a review of your feedback regarding the council itself?
And I apologize, I may have missed it. Was the diversity of that board already addressed? Because that was brought up multiple times in our small group.
I'm not quite sure if we're talking about the diversity of the Racial Profiling Advisory Board.
Yes.
I believe there's significant representation from the community that is reflective of the community. Lawanda, you may help me on that, but that's my understanding in terms of the times I've met with them.
Yeah, so that's the Racial Profiling Advisory Board, not to be confused with the Citizen Review Board.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, right, yeah, okay.
So Faith, does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Kevin, we got your name updated so we won't confuse you for the rest of the meeting, okay?
Thank you.
So on when we met 2 weeks ago, there were 3 questions that we posed in regards to the council. And I'm just going to kind of give you a few highlights from each of the questions. You should have received the detailed notes. And then if there is anything you want to add after I share a few highlights, please do so. So the first question that we posed was, when thinking about the city of Wichita as an organization with many departments, services, and programs, what are the internal priorities, issues, or topic areas for this council to address and why? Some of the things that rose to the top were around talent retention and advancement for minorities, small businesses, promoting small and minority-owned businesses, ensuring that there was youth inclusion from early engagement from a civic perspective, ensuring that there were equitable policies across all of the systems handled by the city of Wichita, looking specifically at systems and policies to ensure that that they were equitable practices. Language matters, making sure that there were clear definitions of the terms that were being used to describe the role of this council, as well as when communicating out to the community, ensuring that we were intentional about the language choices, and really having a clear understanding of the work and a defined purpose for this council were kind of the responses that lifted up for question number 1. And the overarching why was this could assist in dismantling systemic racism. Question number 2 was, when thinking about the city of Wichita as a community partner, working with other organizations to improve diversity, inclusion, and civil rights, what are the priority issues or topic areas for this council to address and why? Those things that I want to highlight here are accountability, education and training, promoting and amplifying the work that is being done by other community members regarding this topic. There was also conversations of connecting to the school system, business communities, and other organizations that are on the front line and ensuring that they are a part of the discussion, and thinking about this work in the most effective and efficient way that will promote change. The last question we asked during our session was, what is the need for this council to be successful in the short term, meaning the next 90 days, and long term to achieve its goals? And in the short term, excuse me, identifying who's doing the work and having an assessment of what is happening within our community, making sure that partnership is highlighted and brought to the top, creating a foundation so that when this work is passed on to the next, that they can just go into the work and not starting from scratch, making sure that there's a vision and goals have been clearly identified and that they match the community needs, and making sure that there's integrity to the process. Communication was also a topic during this discussion around short term. That was communication from the perspective of this group being able to connect with one another, creating directories, understanding how information is being conveyed back out to the community. And then the long-term goals that I would raise are looking at the cultural diversity and making it into a strength of the city, making sure that there are policy and legislative reviews and changes, diversity including prison reform and education, making sure that there is a structured and ongoing plan every year that this group would be focusing on to ensure that the work continues. Those are the big highlights that I want to raise as part of the discussion from 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry. If there are any other thoughts that you want to share that are highlights, please feel free to do so at this time. All right, seeing none, we will turn it back over to the mayor.
So as mayor is getting to come back on, one of the things that we heard and talked about was kind of making sure that the focus and purpose of the council was clear. So Mayor, if you want to share kind of, the original thoughts on this, and then we'll turn it over to Council Member Johnson to get into some more specifics, that would be great.
Yeah, so my initial thoughts on this council, well, a couple things. First off, the 3 months, I'm hoping to reappoint folks on this board, obviously for longer than that. I don't think we can get this done in 3 months. Originally it was based off of my experience with my small business council, which is the first council I created. And then now Johnson and I are talking about the importance of making this what we call in the legislature a standing committee. I think here in the city we call it a board. Which, just like the other boards, we would actually have folks who are likely appointed by myself and members of the council, and it could be a 1 to 2 year terms. And in doing that, we can create a long vision. So I see this as we might overlap with some other organizations out there, but I hope that we're more collaborative with those organizations, and that there is a little bit of confusion, I think, where what is our purpose? What are we here to do? And I actually felt a little bit of pushback, I think, from organizations that I failed to reach out to and communicate with directly, who might think we were trying to duplicate their efforts. One of them, Cake News did a story on the I think racial profiling board, and asked why did you create a group that we already have? And the reality is, we don't want to just focus on racial profiling. There's going to be some overlap, I think, where, and I tell people my vote's going where you guys lead me, right? Like, the difference on the policy side is I'm voting with my advisors, which is this group, while the racial profiling board, I think, in other groups, such as the community board that's set to review police interactions, name escapes me right now, they advise the administrative side of it. So I think that there was some, I think, confusion about, because this is a new group, what this is and what we're doing. I think right now, for example, police reform, I do want this group to kind of touch on that, and we have been, but also there are folks who are brought to this group to look, I think, at also a more global picture. So my goal is a couple things. First off, I want to get us as a city utilizing the experiences of this group, and really almost as a task force to go over, let's say I just got a report card from the Human Rights Commission. Wichita doesn't look good. There is a lot of improvement we could be doing to up our status with the Human Rights Commission. And they gave us a whole list of things that we should be working on. So, my goal is, all right, well, let's start tackling that next, right? Like anything that's immediate, we can, as issues in our community, we can do what we can to get that feedback and then create policy to respond to it. And then also look towards, I think, longer term goals, which is going to be, we got a 29, from Human Rights Commission. We should be at 90s or above. So what are some of the policy we could work on for that? And then having the board in place so that you can keep reevaluating what's working and what's not. So once I think we create this as a standing board, part of that will continuously reevaluate what's in place and is it working and what can we change, what can we fix. That's my vision for this group. Overall, I think that the scope is more diversity, inclusion, civil rights. We're talking about race, gender, sexual identity, sexual orientation, physical and mental abilities, religious, age, and other aspects of diversity. I just do want to, speak to that. My goal is to encompass many different issues and to create not just short-term, but also long-term vision, and then the structure in place to keep that long-term vision or those long-term goals in sight, and to pretty much hold electeds accountable to maintain that status.
Thank you, Mayor, for bringing focus to that conversation. Councilmember Johnson, can you kind of weigh in on the next steps for this effort and balancing that, getting our group working and still paying due diligence to the purpose of this work?
Yeah, thank you, Misty, and thank you, Mayor. So we've heard quite a bit as far as what this council should be doing. We want to make sure that you all are helping us look at internal organizational issues, policies, services, and also externally, what can we do to partner with other organizations to address similar issues. We've heard that there needs to be clarity of purpose on this council. So we're looking at, again, the broad scope of diversity, inclusion, and civil rights. But this group in the next 90 days, it seems, wants to really focus on getting that purpose together. And we are proposing maybe having a working purpose statement where we can establish a subcommittee, maybe refine that language for a final presentation. That's going to be important because language matters not only to us all with the issues that we're looking at, but also as it comes to the full council for consideration or a vote. That language is going to be key. So the subcommittee can work on that. And we've also heard concerns about, again, kind of what the mayor was saying, vetting, committee composition. And we also would hope that subcommittees could work on that as well for future appointments. It's going to be key for this council if we're looking at having a lasting impact, and I know we all are, that we build a strong foundation, and that strong foundation comes from the language that we're using as we're putting this together. So I really wanted to help center us in that as we look what we're doing going forward, and make sure that we're thinking about language intentionally, because what's written in black and white is what matters.
Great, thank you. When we go into our breakout groups, we have 3 purpose statements that we've adapted from other communities that have similar organizations. We're going to put those up right now and just briefly go over them. We'll have them up again in your breakout rooms. I do not want anybody to think that these are done, that is not our intention. It's a place to start from. You may like some of it, you may not like some of it. We have just found in doing this work that 20 people wordsmithing or trying to come up with a statement takes a lot of time. And so if we can give you a starting place to work from, that usually goes a little quicker. And so we will share these here. We will share these in the group, and we'll ask you to tell us what you like, what you don't like, what's missing, what's not. And then, as Councilmember Johnson said, proposing that if this is your passion to really get the purpose statement right, to really think about the governance structure, that you would help us out with the subcommittee to do that work. So the 3 statements I'm not going to read to you, but they all focus on really that trying to capture the full spectrum of diversity and inclusion, as well as this balance between how do we have an internal focus with the organization. So what does what is influenced with the city of Wichita as an organization, but also knowing diversity and inclusion and civil rights as a broad community topic. So what would the role of this task force or this board be in working with other community partners? So these are not, again, verbatim from any of these cities, but try to adapt kind of the language they use and provide some examples. So we will delve into this more in our smaller groups for that. Very good. LaShonda, you want to talk next kind of on process and work plan? Thank you, Councilmember Johnson, for teeing that up for us.
So our goal for today is to review the proposed working statements, get your feedback on each of the statements and which one you prefer or what you think we're missing. We're going to also review the survey results based off of your feedback from the short survey that was sent out the other day to help us and ground us around selecting and identifying priorities for the work. We will then, after we have had an opportunity to review those, we will go into breakout sessions on today. The breakout session gives us a smaller group to kind of talk about the purpose statement as well as the priorities that have been identified. From those conversations, it is our goal to create 4 subcommittees. One subcommittee will be focused in on the purpose statement as well as the governance structure for the council. The second subcommittee will be working on community engagement, partnerships, communication types of work. And then the other 2 subcommittees that we will create will be based off of the priorities that are identified for this council to focus in on. Once we have the 4 subcommittees identified, we will get out a communication to the full council, and you will have the opportunity to select what subcommittee you want to work on that is of most interest to you. The subcommittee will have 2 meetings between now and August to do the work necessary to build a foundation for this council moving forward. We will bring all of that information back together to the full council to review for a final report in August. And then from there, we will get into the next leg of the process with the appointment of a new council and any other steps that are identified from this work team. So the approach that we are taking is to try to break this up into smaller subcommittees so that we can get the foundation and structured developed between now and August, and then also looking at identifying the bigger priorities that this council should focus on to move this work forward. Any thoughts or questions or concerns about approach before we move to survey results? All right, Misty, it's on you.
All right, thank you, LaShonda. So on the survey results, I would share that if you've done work for us before or been involved with the surveys don't ever give you the answer, they give you direction. And so I don't want anybody to think that we are saying this is it. This is what we're going to have conversation about, and it gives you some feedback on how people were thinking about the work. We had 11 responses to this survey, so some of you did not have time to respond and understand that. Again, this is to guide conversation. This is not the answer to this work. So we just used the based on the mean. So this is the scores of how they came out in order here. And there's other ways we could analyze this information. Our purpose for this simply was to give some feedback to all of you on how others might be thinking about priorities. So results were hiring practices, economic development and business came out, and then of what we would talk as an equity lens. So several communities across the nation have kind of a working statement and almost like a checklist of things that should be considered in policy conversations, program service development. So that's the language that we put in there, but that's kind of what we thought we were hearing in the conversations. Policy and legislative review at the state level, police reform, promotional practices within the city, And then contract diversification, there was a lot of bits of conversations about specific services. So whether that was transit or housing, to focus on that. The leadership across the community, diversity inclusion training programs, campaign for cultural shift in our community, and then youth engagement. There may be other topics that you want to include. So in no way is this exhaustive of where you could go, but these were the ones that we took from the notes and thought it might be helpful to at least start the conversation. We are trying, there are so many areas where you can go with this, and I think it's just the old adage, if everything's a priority, then nothing is a priority. So trying to really help get some focus, and that's what we thought we were hearing from you too as well, that you're trying to get some focus, at least to get this work initiated. So we can talk about that more in the breakout sessions as well. LaShonda, did I forget anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so we will, when we go into the breakout sessions, we will have those working proposed statements that we borrowed from other communities that we'll talk about. And then we will go into those survey results and really just discussion on what made sense, what doesn't make sense, and see if we can come out with some priorities. And then we'll spin back into the big group and share out what we heard and talk about next steps that LaShonda kind of laid out. Any questions before we break up?
Misty, what time are you wanting to come back to the bigger group?
I've got, it's close to 9 right now. So do you think like 9:30, 9:35, we can maybe, you and I can maybe text back and forth and make sure if our groups are ready to go and then spin back. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, we're getting this virtual world worked out one way or the other here. So, all right, we are just going to divide you equally, and we will see you on the flip side of the breakout rooms here. All right, well, hopefully everybody made the transition over here. We have 2 main assignments today. One is to talk about the statements, and then we'll move into kind of the priority conversation based on that survey. So I'm going to share my screen, and we'll jump right in with kind of the proposed working statements. Great, can everybody see that? Okay, great, thank you. So hopefully I've said this like 5 times, but I don't want anybody to think we've written the purpose statement for you here. We're just trying to give you an idea of where to maybe jump off from. So trying to capture the idea from both the mayor and council member Johnson that it is full inclusion and diversity spectrum, but also this is an internal and external purpose or focus for that. So what do you like in here? It's my first question, and then we'll talk about what you don't like or what changes you would like to see. So is there anything in here that grabbed you as, I like that language, or I like that direction?
Right out of the gate, I like real organizational change.
Yes. Yeah, that struck me as well.
Right.
I like real organizational change as well, but on a third one, I also like inclusive culture. It feels action-based as well.
I would like to have copies of these statements. I'm not going to make a comment right now because being the person on the council who is blind, I am not accessing this statement right now. So what I would like to have is copies of these emailed to me after this meeting.
Emily, I can email those to you right now, if that would work.
That would be great, actually.
Okay, I am doing that right now.
While you're doing that, I'm curious about on B, where it says to initiate strategies that intervene in discrimination barriers. Intervene in what way? Intervene in another organization's activities, intervene before discrimination happens. What kind of intervention are we talking about?
Okay. So
But anyway,
clarity.
that's a question that I have.
Okay.
I take that to mean that in our context that we are advising the mayor and city council and they are the ones taking the intervention. So we're initiating the strategies, they're taking the intervention. That's my take.
Good point. Good point.
Emily, I want to make sure that you received my email. Did you get it?
The thing is, did you send this to me as a PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't use PowerPoints for the most part. I need to have a Microsoft Word document, or that would actually be good, or rich text, or just TXT.
I can do that.
I'm a little concerned because I don't feel like I can adequately listen to the meeting and try and read whatever you're sending me right now. So I am going to kind of, I guess, jump in and out. That's about the best that I can do with this particular situation.
Okay, well, I will email it to you, and then have that, and then I will contact you after the meeting, and we can figure out a better way that I can share this with you. But I will go ahead and put it in a Word document right now for you.
All right.
Thank you so much. Other feedback.
I'm not saying the screen right now, but the second statement towards the end said something about conscious inclusion. And I kind of liked that terminology, especially as it refers back to interventions in discrimination, because I feel like that gives it more of a proactive feel, because I don't think what we're trying to do here is set up a bunch of reactionary policies. So I do like the idea of, there it is, conscious inclusion, as far as that goes. So that's what stood out to me.
One thing for me is I remember in our initial meeting, I can't recall the woman's name, but I remember she spoke in regards to the word inclusion, and that was a word that kind of I guess didn't resonate in the way that it should have with the group in regards to how the word inclusion was used. So in the first one and the second one, I feel like the word inclusion should, or actually all of them, I feel like the word inclusion should be substituted with a different word, so it doesn't feel like people are included or you have power to include them. And that was the initial statement that she said, and that word is still somehow used in some way, shape, or form in every example.
It is, and it's common across many of these groups, so that'll be something for the folks to consider when they do that.
We have to be careful of our different definitions, because that word is not problematic for me in this context where it says to promote inclusive culture, a culture that includes all. But if it is for others, then perhaps we can find another word to communicate the same thing.
Yeah, just because when you say the word inclusive, it doesn't resonate with you because it's not speaking to you, but it would resonate with me because we know that the word inclusive is typically in this sense used towards minorities. So when you see the word inclusive, it's kind of like when people use the word like privilege. Like I know that word isn't speaking to me, so when I see the word, it doesn't resonate with me as privilege. but to
Right.
other people, it may resonate as privilege. So maybe I guess let's just find a word that
Right.
I guess because a lot of times there's always small stuff like that. It's like you'll go, especially like when you put out like in the media or whatever it is when you put out a statement, people aren't going to see like they're not going to know our conversations. They're not going to know how we broke it down. They're not going to know the understanding that we came to. They're just going to read the statement, see a couple words, and then judge it based on that. And like people typically don't give you like a fair chance or fair understanding to fully explain it after you put out the first time. Like initially when Mayor Whipple had like a certain amount of people in the group, and they were like, "Oh well, this person is this and that. Why didn't they filter this or that before allowing people in the group?" But it's like he just invited or allowed certain people to be a part of the council without fully understanding the background or who they were. But he was still judged on how they, responded or how they, I guess, advocated themselves outside of the meetings. So like it's still like regardless of how the word resonate with you, the words still have to represent all of us.
Right.
Devontae, there was I think in the first meeting there was discussion about spending more time talking about diversity and getting away from the term inclusive. Exactly. I'm looking at that, for instance, that phrase inclusive culture. We could use something like a culture of mutual respect and diversity, or something of that effect. Does that ring truer to you?
Yeah, because when I see inclusive, I see it in the same way. I can't recall what her name was, but when I see the word inclusive, it's like you have permission to include them. When I see the word mutual, anytime you see the word mutual is always like, hey, we have like a mutual friend, we have a mutual understanding. It's always something to where everybody is on the same page and we have like an equal understanding or an equal grasp towards whatever concept it is.
It sounds like inclusive in that case is like inserting. You're inserting something into a whole, and instead of
like it doesn't belong there.
Yeah. A lot of them are using diversity and equity instead of inclusion.
And equity is an important term in this.
And and that might be one of the things I'm finding different from our council versus some of the other councils is the word equity. And I think, and I'm really glad we had the rabbi on. The rabbi Davis has someone I've worked with or witnessed work for years on Beyond Tolerance, and he's very good with language. So I'm glad that we can kind of very good with language, and help, I think helping us get forward with this. So I'm glad about that. And I do want to just say, I believe we used to use terminology such as tolerate, right? Like, oh, we should tolerate one another. And tolerate is, we tolerate a crying baby on an airplane, right? Like, it's not like, that's not the goal, right? The goal, and then I think it kind of moved into inclusiveness. And that discussion on our first meeting was just eye-opening for me, because there was an indication of power of like allowing someone to be included into your meal, let's say, like allowing them into your house. Like, and the reality is like that power dynamic with that word was something that I think my own privilege didn't allow me to see. And, I think Mr. Harris brings that up now is, well, the inclusion, while the intent might be okay, not everyone's seeing it that way. So I do, I support moving away from that word, and going towards, just like they've moved away from tolerance to inclusion, what's the next level of terminology to really express what we're trying to do, to make it so that there is none of that interpretive gray area, like we're very clear. And so equity might be that word. And like I said, there are people on this this discussion right now who have much better grasp, I think, of expressive language than I do. So I'm glad we're having this conversation, and I look forward to seeing what we come up with.
We're celebrating diversity. We're celebrating diversity, and if we have, and also somehow or other, I think the word wholeness or whole might be in there somewhere. to indicate that we're all part of one. But I get that idea about the inclusiveness being along the lines of, as the mayor says, tolerance. Tolerance is no longer an acceptable term.
Yes. So for me, I want to be honest. Personally, the word inclusive, like when I see the word inclusive, like it doesn't strike me as, oh, this is offensive. This is like, how dare they use this word? Like when I see the word, like it doesn't hit me on a personal level to where I feel offended. But I think what my overall purpose is in regards to saying what I said is I don't want to give people in any way, shape, or form the opportunity to try and flip the purpose of what we're trying to do and try and push their own agenda. So like I prefer to use a statement that when people read it, they can't create their own agenda and like move forward and say, hey, well, I don't agree with what this people, what the this whatever is doing because of this, and this, and they take away from the overall goal, they take away from the overall purpose, and it feels like all the work and discussion that we've had with each other is completely for nothing, because we can be on the same page, but if you have one person who finds one thing and they share it all over the media, then they create an idea of what our overall goal is and our overall vision is, and they completely destroy that based on their own personal agenda and their own personal usage of how they would use or flip that word. So I just would like to go away from the opportunity for those people to even be able to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think also at best is a distraction, and at worst, just like Mr. Harris said, it actually could be a deterrent for what we're trying to do. So, yeah, let's if not now, let's brainstorm and keep communicating what could be stronger language for what we're trying to get done.
So I'm going to just jump in here and kind of recap what I think I've heard, and then we can talk about additional language or other changes that you might want to see. So things that we've heard as a positive is thinking about real organizational change, changing culture. We like the idea of conscious behavior so that it is not reactive but proactive in the effort. Equity or mutual respect might be better language to include, and that the idea of inclusion creates some type of barrier or challenges, or feels in some way that we are talking of a privilege to include, instead of that we are just wanting to have that mutual respect and diversity of our community. And that also that we think that we might want to use some language of celebrating and making, again, this a positive or proactive effort to do that. Is there other parts that you would say are not working here, and or some other language that you would like to recommend go forward to this subgroup that will be working on the final statement?
I would like to include the initiate strategies, because it's very take action. Like
Okay.
their job is to provide this to the governing body. They initiate strategies. I like it. It's very take action.
Okay. So again, going back, we want statements that are proactive instead of reactive to this work.
Also, I just want to throw in there, when we talk about organizational change, I just do want to make it clear that we're not, to add language to clarify, we're not just talking about the 3,000 people who work within the city, right? Like the city organization. We also want to have communal change. We also want to kind of set that those values and that tone through the community. So it's not just within our particular organization. And I think these hit that, but also, there's a way we can kind of make that also clear that, our goal isn't just to change the work environment of City Hall, but also to have Wichita's values reflect those values, of other cities our size and our status.
Within the society.
Exactly.
Also,
yes.
also, there might be a place for the word or the concept of strength, that our strength, that this promotes our strength, the diversity and equity, it makes us stronger. Not sure exactly where it would go, but
So was it A or C that everyone agreed with and thought was
I don't
better?
know that we're really picking a one or the other. We get the opportunity to kind of say what parts of any of these that we like or we don't like. So
Because in C, so like if we change the word inclusive and use the word like embracive, so our purpose is to create an embracive, like everyone is embraced, like their culture is embraced. I feel like that would be a good word in the third one.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Yeah,
anything?
just real,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, just I guess further to the topic of words and their meanings. I think it's important to focus on language that is maybe less interpretive. I'm not a really big fan. For example, I'm not a really big fan of platitudes because I mean they're really interpretive. So, for instance, everybody's heard the term "be the change you want to see in the world," and like that's great for some kinds of change, but maybe not for other kinds of change. Some people maybe just need to stay home and not be the change they want to see in the world, because that's not equitable. So I guess what I mean is, phrases like words like equity are less interpretive, I feel, than terms like inclusion or respect or things like that. And I understand that, we can't we're probably not going to be able to come up with any definitions that are completely non-interpretive, but I think that's important to focus on, is words that further our, I said it, we're good.
There was also a statement that said that must balance diversity and qualifications. And I really have a problem with that word qualifications, because when we're working to advance diversity, it doesn't mean that we're lowering our standards.
That was in the notes that you're referring to from our last meeting. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Great point. Okay, I'm going to do a final call on the purpose statements here. Any other ideas that we want to share? And I would encourage you, if this is a passion for you, to with words and with clarity of meaning, that if we will need folks to help serve on that subcommittee, and so encourage you to think about that. Okay, we're going to move on then. Did I hear anybody? We're going to move on to our next question, which is to focus on the survey results. Again, we had 11 people participate in the survey result, or in the survey. And I'm going to stop sharing here for just a second, and then go to the survey. And pull those up and go through those. Okay. And so again, 11 people based on the mean score was how we went through this. The top 6 were hiring practices, inclusion, and diversity in business and economic development. Language, of course, can be changed with that, but I think the focus on economic development and business, this idea of an equity lens, and we can talk more about that, but the idea is some kind of a review process for policies, programs, and services that think about equity and provisions. Policy and legislative advocacy, so this was really a look, what we thought we were hearing. There were some ideas about this group working more at the state level, police reform, and the promotional practices. So that was really looking at internal. Those were the top 6. The next were contract diversification, specific services, leadership positions in the community, inclusion and programs and training in the community, an extra 0 in there, diversity and inclusion campaign, and then youth engagement. So I'm going to jump back up here to the top 6 and just start seeking feedback. Are there things in here that we have agreement on? And I would just reiterate, surveys never are the answer, but they provide guidance for conversation and moving that forward. So the will of the group here, things that stand out to you, things that you would like the direction of this committee as a priority to focus on.
I'm actually one of the ones that picked number 4 as my top 3, and I kind of wish I hadn't now, because I did a little thinking on it last night, and really this group in my mind should focus more on our community, and if we're blessed enough to do something that makes a big enough change that it's they're able to replicate it somewhere else, and that's good. But I think if we get too focused on trying to advocate for change somewhere else before we've been able to make any change on our own community, I think this group might get too lost in that activity. So I kind of wish I had not picked the advocacy at the state level. I think we should focus more on our own community and get our house together before we focus on activities somewhere else.
And that's why we have these conversations. So that's a great example. Other
And I
thoughts?
have a question about the number 6, promotional practices. Are we talking about promoting the city of Wichita into the world, or are we talking about promoting within the organizational structure of the city?
For looking at the notes from the conversations before, this was more about internal promotion. So how do we ensure management level, leadership level positions are Great question. Another good example of language. So what do you guys, this is your time. You are all wonderful volunteers. Where do you want to spend time and energy thinking about this?
So I spoke to the police chief and a couple other people recently. I want to say it was just last week, and I was telling them that in Colorado we passed a bill. So it was basically like the community and then us, like the Broncos organization. We passed a bill that was in regards to police reform, and we literally like killed the bill. Like it was like, I want to say it ended up being like 18-1 or something like that. But it was a police reform bill that was passed there that I think is something that's really good. So that doesn't have to be our complete focus, but I think I have all the information that we need in order to pass basically the same bill. And I can get that information over to Misty or Mayor Whipple or whoever, so we can review it and we can have a conversation about that later. But basically, like I say this to say that the bill is already passed in the state of Colorado, and basically the work is already done. The fight is already fought. All we need to do from that standpoint is just get it pushed in our own state. All the information is there. All the conversations that like have been there. Everything that we're doing right now has already been worked out by another state. It just gets the bill like agreed upon and pushed in our own state. And I think
So, Monty, what I think I'm hearing is there's some connection with police reform or policies in general that would be something you think we should have a focus in. I think that's part of our challenge, right? Like,
yeah, but the work is already done.
Yeah, I think that's real specific.
So instead of us like doing surveys or like coming to agreements or whatever of what's going on, like I think the way that the bill was passed, I think it would be very easy for us to come with a common agreement and say, hey, let's focus on this. It's already done. Let's just push this really quick, and then we can start to move on. But at least we get something huge accomplished within our group.
Other ideas of purpose of this work for this committee? Where
Can you
do
go
want
to the
spend
second
time?
slide?
You bet.
I think going back to the police reform, it's not just a matter of police reform, but also a matter of the image that the police has with the community. That there are a lot of things going on in the local police community that is very positive, that may not be the overarching image that people have of the police. There are things that can be emphasized that the police are doing now that they could do more of, and get more into the community and all, so that there's the ultimate goal is for the police and the community to be more on the same page and to see each other more as partners rather than adversaries. And whatever we can do to get that happening, I think it falls not only on the police department, but also on community leaders as well.
I guess I have another question about this inclusion work. I don't know how from the initial meeting, how the word or the usage of it has fallen through the cracks on so many levels. Like I've seen it maybe 6 or 7 times in the initial conversation, and I'm not sure how, in what shape or form, that word has been able to slip through the cracks. But I see it probably 4 times in this alone, and 3 times in the previous one. So that's 6, 7 times, and I'm not. I guess I'm a little confused in regards to how that word has been slipped through the cracks on so many occasions.
Yeah, and Devontae, I would think that would be on us, just the language that we were pulling from the notes and language we have heard elsewhere. So we can definitely take that out going forward. I was not a part of that first conversation, so that's on me not knowing that.
Got you. And I guess another one that I feel like that should be maybe, I guess we have to return to the initial, but
we've got just a little, at a time. Is there any? Welcome back, everybody. LaShonda, I will say that our group did not get through our second question. So we made, I think, good progress on the purpose statement, but barely got into the conversation on what to do with the priorities.
So we can stay in the larger group. We can share with you what we've discussed in regards to what the priorities should be, and then maybe we can have a dialogue in the greater group to see if there are any differences of thought on what should be considered the priority. Does that work for the group? Okay.
Yep.
We did all of our homework. I just want to put it out there too. We did all of our work in our 30-minute session.
We had very thoughtful conversation, so I will raise that one up there. So.
All right, so I will kick us off then and kind of give an overview what we talked about on purpose statements. The majority of the group really felt like purpose statement B had a lot of substance to the description of the statement. There is still this conversation around ensuring that when we speak about inclusion, that we are very intentional around this word and making sure that it represents, it's not that we're asking for permission to be included, but that we should intrinsically be included in what is happening in our community in all areas and aspects. So some language that was thrown out was something like intrinsic diversity and inclusion. There was a lot of conversation about really liking this idea and the purpose statement be about foster, initiate, and intervene, because it seemed like an action plan on what the work was going to do and how we were going to do the work. Mutual respect for all was language that we talked about liking. Removing this idea of conscious inclusion that seemed more academic versus community. And then there was this discussion about making sure, as this work went to the subcommittee, that the subcommittee also looked at communities that were comparable, that had issues like we have here in our community, as we are trying to define the purpose statement, to ensure that we haven't missed components of language that would be more representative of the actual activities that have occurred in our community, that look like our communities. And so wanting to make sure that we go and look at some other communities from a comparable perspective and a peer city perspective as we finalize the language on the purpose statement. So that is kind of the bigger discussion we had in our group.
Great. I think from our group, we talked about the language of inclusion is not the right language, that it feels that it is giving permission almost sounds like a language of privilege instead of what the intent, and is a distraction from the intention of maybe the work that we need to do. So words of equity, mutual respect were suggested that might be better language and more direct about what we're wanting to do. Much like your group, we talked about proactive language. So words of real organizational change, initiating strategies, promoting strength, embracing cultural change. Those are all language that we threw out, or the team threw out here about making sure the language is proactive, not reactive to the work for that. And then we also talked a little bit about maybe some language about celebrating or diversity as a strength that we should be promoting. So leaning into that type of work.
Okay.
The other thing I would just note, right, that we want to make sure that somehow in that purpose statement, we are recognizing this is both internal and organizational change, but also change within the community that we are wanting to see. So we need to balance that. I would ask for feedback from everybody. Did we capture that correctly before we move on?
Yeah, from our group, that was I guess the basis of what we spoke about. We're just basically trying to not give people or others the I guess opportunity to take our conversations, take our statements, and use them outside of our initial purpose, and actually be able to move forward instead of taking step backs trying to explain what our ultimate goal is.
So it sounds like there's a lot of consistency among the groups, and I think a pretty good starting place for the task group to do the wordsmithing and to propose some specific language for this work. Our intention for this was to try to get to some clarity of purpose. That's something we heard within the groups last time, was we need to make sure we have clarity on purpose. Did this help? Are we moving in the right direction, knowing there's still work to get done?
Yeah, I guess the ultimate goal is when anyone from any environment sees this, they feel like it resonates with them on a personal level. They don't feel excluded. They don't feel invited. They don't feel in any way, shape, or form that that when they read this statement that our group or our council, our purpose is against them or against us, or in general, we want to make it seem like, or make them realize what our actual purpose is, so we can begin to move forward, actually create change, because you're always going to find someone who wants to play devil's advocate, who takes your terminology, who takes your wordage, and they create their own agenda by using that. So we want to take that away from people's abilities to be able to do that. Instead of doing that, then we can see our actual purpose, and people can be like, okay, well, this resonates with me. So what if we do this instead of this? Moving forward instead of moving backward, like you said, being more proactive instead of reactive. If we use the word inclusive, words that make people feel like they're invited or like you allowed them in, then it's like it's a reactive statement. Then you're going to look, it's going to be on KWCH or Cake, whatever, and they're going to be like, there's been a huge Facebook discussion in regards to this, and they're offended, and it's all going to go towards Mayor Whipple. It's not going to go towards the group because they don't really know who's a part of it. They're going to say Mayor Whipple and his council have used this term to blah blah blah, but they're not going to know that it's minorities who are in the conversation who either agreed upon things or misunderstood the uses that people could take it as. So instead of giving people the opportunity to do that, let's just try and be proactive, move forward, and get away from the conversations of trying to figure out what will people accept and actually focus on things that actually need our attention and need our focus.
Great, thank you. Any other feedback or things that we missed in our summary here?
LaShonda, did you mention that we said we don't want to exclude the civil rights part of it?
I don't remember, but thank you for bringing it up. The conversation we did have in the group was around making sure that the statement is inclusive of the civil rights component, that was lacking from the statement, and we needed to figure out how to fold that into the bigger purpose statement. Any other thoughts or feedback? So seeing none in the chat, I posted the 12 items that came out of the survey, just kind of as a quick reference. And in our conversation, number 3 was identified as one of the top priorities that this council should focus on. And that is developing an equity lens or review process for policy programs and services. We also discussed combining number 1 and number 6, and that was for hiring and promotional practices. And that gets us back to the talent retention and advancement conversations. And then the third one that we talked about is somehow creating a sandwich of items number 9 through 12 and making that a focus area around training and development and promotion. But there's this conversation that if we want this work to continue, if we want to have legacy with this work, that this work also has to begin with our youth and our young adults so that they have the ability to move the torch forward. And so anything that is done in this work, the sentiment is that we have to ensure that the youth are included in every step of the process. So including them in these types of dialogues, including them in civic engagement, including them in leadership and diversity training, and those types of things has to be a part of the mindset that we use in moving this work forward. So while youth engagement is its own item, youth engagement has to be dispersed and infused in everything that is done with this council so that there is a legacy and a baton to carry forward and that they understand the history of the work moving ahead. If that is not what y'all said, somebody correct me. But those are kind of the top 3 things that in our conversation, this group talked about as being the priority for the work, as well as identifying a priority that has a focus on civil rights.
Our group didn't really get that far, and we also have someone in our group that wasn't able to view a lot of this because it wasn't sent out ahead of time, and she's sight impaired. So I think in the future we probably need to send this out for the group to review prior to these discussions, so that if we're not able to get to all these, we can at least have some of the pre-work done before the discussion, because I don't feel adequately prepared to say, here's my top 3 and this is why I think we should do it. Just feedback for future sessions.
And Faith, I will tell you that sentiment was in our group as well. And so we well noted, and we will do a better job in ensuring that you have information so that you can have a productive conversation when we come together as a larger group.
in our group, I don't think we focused on this, but I believe it's an important focus for us, is the youth aspect. That is, in the school system, that whatever we're trying to create here for us adults, that we should create something, a system, so that as kids grow in our school system, it will be natural for them rather than learning it later on in life.
I think so. Within the multiple options that we had, I know that when I look at them, almost every single one of them resonates with me on a different level, and all of them are very important to me. What I think our purpose should be initially is trying to attack which one of those options are most attainable, so we actually get stuff accomplished in our timeline, right? And then from that, we won't feel rushed or pushed or watched over for not accomplishing anything. You know what I'm saying? So like, I think we should focus on things on that list that are more like attainable in whatever work frame or time frame that we have, so we get different things accomplished, because I don't think anyone can say one option or one thing is more important or whatever than another option. So I think we should just find a couple things off that list that is most attainable, because something that may resonate with me may resonate different with you. And if we're going back and forth in regards to which is more important, then I think we're going to have this conversation on, well, this is more important to me because this is more important to me because of this. But I think we should find which one of those are the most like attainable for our group and most attainable from Mayor Whipple's reach to grasp and take control over, and then push forward on that instead of having the conversation on leveling which one is most important, because we can't really determine or factor which one is more important, because there's 20 some people in this group, and if there's 12 different options, we're all going to have different opinions in regards to that.
At the same time, we don't want to be in a position where we say, okay, we've done this, we've accomplished it, now we can go home satisfied. My point regarding the school system is, if we put something in place that is ongoing, that's an accomplishment, even if it goes on after this commission is disbanded.
And I think one of the things I would challenge with is thinking about long-term with this work, right? If we can get the broad topics defined correctly, then when we talk about strategies on how to do this work, I think that's absolutely right. Like, what are some short-term work, right? Short-term strategies and efforts because people need to see
progress,
momentum and activities and accomplishments, and that keeps us all motivated. And then the long-term effort. So even going on what the LaShonda's group is working on, if we're looking at an equity lens, right? That's creating something that has a lot of then implications that could be used on all kinds of policies. If we talk about, when you talked about Sam between 9 through 12, I love that, because, right, like, that's all about communities and partnerships and youth, right? But there could be some real early strategies that the team and group would develop on what could be done for immediate impact and still playing long ball throughout that. And kind of same way with hiring practices. That's an internal focus, and maybe it starts with hiring or starts with promotions, but again, short-term and long-term effort in there. And it's a place to start. So I don't know if that suggestion there from the group to kind of focus in on that for our initial subgroups, if that creates pause for people, like that doesn't seem reasonable, or if that seems a reasonable place to start. We're eerily quiet on the virtual world here. Does that seem that there are suggestions that came out from that task group seem like a reasonable place to start?
It almost sounded like your group needed a little bit, well, everybody may need a little bit more time to take a look. I'm comfortable with our list, but if everybody, because with the pause moment, that must mean there's some thoughts going on.
I think that's mainly because, well, I personally, I don't have it in front of me to just look at it and say, hey, this, and this, or like what you guys said before is it wasn't something that we were actually able to look over, process, go away from, come back to, and still have those same thoughts and still have those same understandings. I think if everyone had more time to look at it and come to an understanding, we can say, okay, well, you mean after thinking about it, after researching, after understanding what's actually been said, these are things that could actually be done. These should be our focus points. These are our short-term goals. These are our long-term goals. And then you can have something to work towards.
Or maybe that subcommittee takes the second group's feedback and these 12, and that subcommittee works it with maybe any additional comments that the first group might email them or something.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of my takeaway as well, where it seems like the first half of the conversation and the second half of the conversation is when we're going to really, I think, hammer down what that list is going to be. But I also agree with Mr. Harris and Rabbi Davis that it seems like we're probably, once we get those goals down, we will probably see, short-term goals and then long-term goals. We'll see, I think, technical goals which will be like policy that we can put in place, almost, things we can just knock out and check off the list. And then more of a inspirational goals where bigger vision also that we'll continue to work towards. So I think my takeaway is that's right now developing, and we might need a further discussion on that.
Do you trying to keep momentum and movement going on this? Is there would you be comfortable if we sent this out, the notes from this meeting, in an email and kind of try to capture that thought and then provide a time frame for feedback or change or direction, and then start working in it if we have that, to start working into subgroups? I'm just trying to see how do we use the next, that we use the next 2 weeks wisely, I guess, and keep that effort going. I'm seeing some head nodding. Thumbs up if we want to try to send this out and see if we can get some consensus going that way. And if we feel like it's all over the board, we'll come back and do the group again. And if we feel from what we hear from you, and we'll probably try to put a real direct question, are you comfortable doing this? And then we'll just see where folks would like to go within groups to start doing this work. Because I know you're all passionate about the whole of the work, and there may be some areas that really drive your interest. Does that sound like a plan? All right.
Or Misty, this is Alicia Sanchez. I think giving us at least a week to maybe provide feedback, thoughts, and whatnot, and then that would help maybe narrow down what those subgroups might be, and then resending that out, giving us enough time to then determine here are maybe the top 3 areas for subgroups. So then in that next week, when we come together, we would know who would be on what subgroup or had an interest in what they are, and then that way that we could start moving that direction. So giving us a little bit of time, but to your point, time is of the essence, so we need to move swiftly. But I think making sure that we all have time to evaluate what's been sent out and processed today would be helpful from my perspective. So for what it's worth, some feedback.
No, we appreciate your feedback and know that we are, and your patience as we are trying to balance that moving forward, and a huge topic here. So that seems reasonable to me. We will commit to getting this out by Monday, and giving you Monday, Tuesday, a full week for the next Monday to give us that feedback. And then that pushes us to do probably a fairly quick turnaround, though, for your areas of interest, so that when we come back in a couple of weeks on the 30th, that we're ready to work in groups. So we give you a week for review, please note that that's going to be a pretty quick turnaround to determine where your areas of interest would be. Is that clear? Right. All right. Thank you, Alicia, for the thumbs up. Okay. Thank you all for your virtual patience here as we are doing this. It is challenging to try to keep it all moving forward and get the feedback when you're not in the room together. So, LaShonda, anything we forgot from the technical or logistics point?
No, I think we got it all covered.
Right. Then, Mayor, I think we hand it back to you, sir. Any final words?
Excuse me. Just want to say thanks to everyone for taking us on. I know that it's super important that we get this foundational work done so that we can get to, I think, some of the more challenging stuff. So I just want to thank everyone for being on it and taking this task on. And also look forward to the future conversations that we're going to have, preparing not just at our next meeting, but preparing for the next meeting. So thanks everyone. And, let's keep this discussion going.
Great.
Rabbi Davis. I think Rabbi Davis had his hand up. No? Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.